together. We can agree to go on, and prayerfully, as we get closer to Him, He'll reveal more light and understanding. It might be that both of us are wrong. It might be that both of us are right. We're just looking at it from two different perspectives. Eyewitness accounts oftentimes are predicated upon the person's particular perspective, where he happened to be standing, his own particular situation as he was looking at a subject. And we're going to talk about the calendar today. Just a little bit. Just a little bit, okay? You know that the calendar and how we keep the calendar is one of those areas that seems to be such a conundrum in the Hebrew roots community. You can get two people together and have three different opinions about the calendar. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But before I do, I want to preface this teaching by telling you that what I'm sharing with you today is wrong. What you understand is wrong to a certain degree, because the calendar is going to change in the future. Right now, we're keeping it to the best of our understanding, each one of us. If you're not keeping it to the best of your understanding, then shame on you, okay? But we're doing the best that we can to keep the calendar. But I believe that the calendar's changed, at least from what I can understand in recorded history, 3 different times because of some cataclysmic events in the earth. Noah's flood changed the calendar. How many of you believe that? In fact, if you go back and study Hebrew calendars, you'll understand it was predicated on a 12-month calendar of 30 days. 12 times 30 is 360. Yet today we have a 365-day year, right? If you go back and study some extra biblical accounts, you'll notice that the book of Enoch was predicated upon a 360-day year. If you go and study what happened in the book of Joshua, you know that the calendar changed because Joshua spoke to the sun and the moon, and it stood still in its place for a season. It changed the calendar. History records that. If you go back and look in history again, during the 8th century, under the reign of King Hezekiah, Hezekiah was petitioning Yahweh for some answers concerning his health issues, and he needed a sign. He gave him a sign, and it was that the sundial would go backwards somewhere around 18 to 20 minutes, the best that people can calculate. Again, history records that during the 8th century, every known calendar of civilization changed as a result of that. Did you hear me? I submit to you, at least it's my considered opinion. It's not something I've just arbitrarily pulling out of a hat. I submit to you that the calendar is going to change again simply because we're going to go through some cataclysmic events. We're going to see some shifting in the polar realms of the earth, and we're going to see some things happen that I believe is going to affect the earth's ecliptic. It's going to affect the earth's wobble, and as it affects the earth's wobble, listen to me, it's going to affect those luminaries that are in our orbit and affected by our own gravitational pull, such as the moon. And if you look at the moon and its orbit, you'll see that it has a wobble to it that's similar to what this earth has, okay? And so it's quite apparent something is going to happen in the future that will affect time as we know it. And so, having said that, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I believe is the way that Yahweh wants to keep his calendar. If you have a difference of opinion, you don't have the mic. I will gladly give you the mic at a later date. You will have to make sure that you let me know, because I will gladly hear your opinion. I've been studying this thing for close to 18 years now. And I know that this is as close as I can get, in my opinion. And I still believe, again, that what I'm teaching you is subject to change in the days in front of us. Is that okay? Let's look. 7th month festival. We know that these festivals are the 7th month, known in Hebrew as Tishri. Say that. Tishri. I personally believe, and here's where most people will kind of get a little anxious with me. I personally believe that it begins with a sighting of the first sliver of the moon. And the reason I believe that is because of what I find in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And we see there in Genesis chapter 1:14 that the signs, the stellar luminaries, were placed there for just that, signs. What does a sign do? It conveys information. If I can't see it, I don't understand its information. If it's not illuminated, I can't grasp the information. The word ot, Strong's number 226, means just that: a sign, a signal, a banner, a mark, a token, a proof. It has to be seen. There are a lot of individuals that believe that the month begins during the conjunction, or what is known as the dark of the moon. And I understand the opinions. And one of the reasons that I understand it is because if you look at the sliver of the moon, and then you understand that the holy convocations like Festival of Sukkot and the Feast of Unleavened Bread begin on the 15th of the month, which would be a full moon. It's hard to get a full moon from the sighting of the sliver to that 15th. But on the other hand, simply because of what's happening with the Earth's orbit and the wobble of the Earth and the moon, Yahweh's going to have to do something to affect that light to the point where we get back to the proper calendar. Does that make sense? Or at least just smile and nod. The dark of the moon lasts anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 days, and it's, in my opinion, because of that, it's an unstable measuring point. Words regulate the seasons. The Hebrew word for seasons there is the word moed. Moedim is the plural of it, and it means an appointed place, a time, a meeting, a sacred season or festival. That's why these holy convocations are important to us. They are divine, listen to me, publicly mandated convocations. There are some people that take exception to that. In fact, I have some close friends that believe that the Sabbath is not a commanded public assembly. And if you look in Leviticus chapter 23, the first holy festival that's mentioned is that weekly festival known as the Shabbat. I believe if you understand what the word moed means, and if you understand that these are Yahweh's holy convocations, that word is mikra. The word kara means a summons to something that's called as a convention, where you can hear a declaration, a proclamation, or the reading of something. It leads me to believe that these are, in fact, commanded public assemblies. Okay? And I do believe that the purpose of these holy convocations are to put us in a place where we can hear the voice of the bridegroom. We're told in John, you can begin to look at that from John 10 to through John 14, Yahweh speaking through the Ruach by his ambassador Yeshua, he tells us that there are many voices in the world, none of those without significance. He also tells us that my sheep hear my voice. Am I right? And so it's imperative that we hear his voice, and I believe that he's able to speak to you during any time of the week, any time of the month, any time of the year, but there are some specific set-aside appointments when he said, if you will meet me here, I will speak to you, I will reveal myself to you. If you miss the Sabbath, then you miss what I believe he has set in store for you that week to give you insight and directions for that are in front of you the next week, and so forth and so on as it relates to these. Now, if we do believe the way that that song was teaching us earlier, that we're going to see some difficult days in front of us, and we understand that what we were taught from the Christian perspective regarding the rapture, that we'd get out of jail free card, and we would leave out of the earth and, you know, be playing a violin or a fiddle or a harp, I don't know which one it would be, sitting on a cloud while the Jews were down here suffering. My goodness, nothing could be further from the truth. And so it leads me to believe that there's something going to happen here on the earth that's going to involve you and I, and yet Yahweh has a place called a sanctuary. And that sukkah is a sanctuary. These holy convocations are sanctuary. His calendar is for that purpose. It's to bring you in a place of information, and I believe information is a place of protection. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Most of us believe that isn't that true? You've heard that. But my goodness, if you are ignorant concerning what's going to happen in the days ahead, my goodness, it looks at me as that the potential for being overwhelmed by the enemy is pretty, the percentage of you being overwhelmed is pretty high, right? The word moed comes from a Hebrew word, Strong's number 3259. You can see it here on my notes. And that word is ya'ad. Say that with me. Ya'ad. Go and mow the grass in the ya'ad. It indicates, we're talking these moed. it indicates that the purpose of these moed are to point out something, to define something. That word ya'ad also indicates that in the process of pointing out or defining something, that you are espousing your wife to you. You see that? You can't separate those two meanings from each other. The purpose of the moed is to point out something that's very definitive to the one that you have been espoused to, and that's what Yahweh's purpose for these holy convocations is. It's to give you some information. And now, to tell you how you can live, to tell you regarding the conditions that are on the horizon in front of you, to make sure that you understand that there are more for you than there are against you. If you look at that word, ya'ad, and you look at its root stem, the ayin dalet root, the word ad or ed, depending on associated with it, it hints at a witness or a testimony. So again, these holy convocations are just that. They are a witness that testifies. That testifies, whether it's the signs, the signs, or if you want to understand them as luminaries, they're signs nonetheless. Yahweh 7, look at some meaning. You'll see it explained a bit better. These signs either must be heard or seen in order to properly fix a date or a season. Okay? Now, it would seem fitting then, since we're talking about the 7th month festivals, and the first day of the 7th month is the festival known as Yom Teruah, also known as the Feast of Trumpets. Also known as the day of shouting and blasting, and making a declaration orally, making something heard. A proclamation is supposed to occur on this particular convocation. In fact, there's something unique about Yom Teruah. It's the only festival that does not have a date fixed on it. It's predicated by being in a position to observe certain signs in order to understand when it's going to start. That's why you read the Messiah give individuals being in the field and having their white garments beside them, ready at a moment's notice to pick up the white garments which are required at Yom Teruah. Okay. The sign of this, especially for a bride that has been espoused. She has a ketubah that's been given to her that takes place during the spring festival known as Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. She's betrothed, she is legally married, and the only thing that she has